Hello! So these are some of my finance slash accounting books, but also textbooks. And since my finance slash accounting section is not big enough to warrant 2 videos, this video will actually be a little bit longer, but I'll try to speed it up. So the first one is Financial or Analysis for Financial Management. I believe this book is actually just a textbook that goes over how to manage large amounts of money and smart ways. It's basically meant for executives and companies going over core concepts of like corporate finance. That's what it's meant for. The next one is The Economics of Money, Banking and Financial Markets. This is a bit more of a, I don't know, I want to say it's like an intermediate textbook, like maybe second year university, third year university. Liability management, liquidity management, transaction costs. That's what this kind of book is. So you can think of like institutional finance for big corporations or something. Horngreen's Accounting, Managerial Chapters. This is an accounting textbook. I know nothing about it. I didn't know there was a specific method called Horngreen's. I'm not like an accounting major or anything, but I do want to learn a little bit more about accounting. So that's why I have this book. I actually have it on my 2023 reading goals video. I think I show it there. I want to study finance and accounting all throughout 2023. Next one is Debt. The First 5,000 Years. I got this as a gift, and people said it was really, really good. So I'm super hyped to read it, and I will most likely review it, but I haven't had the chance to get to it yet. It's still very pristine and clean. It's a new copy. Gotta love that. Technical Analysis Explained. Technical analysis is like, this is a Bible of that genre of investing. This is basically what some people call pseudoscience. Some people say it's not. I guess if you're going to do day trading, or maybe even if you want to evaluate a stock for the long term, you can look at graphs and make inferences based off the patterns inside graphs. Some people do this successfully. Some people say day traders actually don't outcompete long-term investors. I don't know. It's debated. Whatever gets your money works, right? Supply chain finance, risk management, resilience, and supplier management. I thought this was an interesting area to read about. The way I invest in companies is I do read about the financials, and I also do like more informal forms of investigation to find out what kind of product they're supplying, or whether there's like a scandal they're involved in, legal issues, whatever. And I thought looking at the supply chain, getting ideas about supply chains, not only domestically but internationally, would be a great way to not only assess companies through financials, but through the wider context of the society they're existing in. Fraud auditing for forensic accounting. This I wanted to read just to have a bit of skepticism when I read financial reports or anything related to finance. But at the same time, I also think forensics in general is very interesting. So that's why I got this book. I thought, wow, that's like realistic. I thought that's one, useful, but super, wow, that's like really cool. It gets really interesting. That's why I got it. Guide to Financial Markets. This was a gift from me. And to be honest, it's a great book. I'm going to read it before I get too heavy into finance this year, which I'll make a video explaining that to you guys. Don't worry about that. I'm going to read it because it goes over core concepts in like a very brief way to give me a reminder. Because the last finance textbook I read might have been 3 years ago. So it wouldn't hurt to get some refreshers on these basic stuff. The Manual of Ideas, the Proven Framework for Finding the Best Value Investments. This is a value investing book. I think it's a very popular one that people talk about, but I was also gifted this as well, and I will definitely read it. I'm not opposed to value investing. Financial Accounting in an Economic Context. So this is a financial accounting textbook, and this is the kind of book you would want to read if you were going to read the financial reports of companies. And this guy in particular teaches a course at, I think, MIT or something, and this book in specific is a highly regarded book because he takes financial statements but then works them into a greater economic context and explains maybe what the economic context would have to say about the financial statements of a company. So this is also another book I'm excited to read for my financial reading goals this year. Successful Strategies, Investors Who Made Them Work. I saw this in a bookstore, and I thought, okay, like, 'cause I don't know. It seems a bit memey. It seems a bit like not rigorous. But then when I flipped through it, I looked at it. I was like, actually, yeah, there are some good ideas in here, and it could be interesting to read. I feel like it's either going to be too superficial, or it will be a really, really good book that is just underhyped, which would make great content for the overrated, underrated book series. Financial Modeling and Valuation, A Practical Guide to Investment Banking and Private Equity. I remember buying this book to get more books on financial modeling, and I decided that I would start with this book because this book actually walks you through the step-by-step process. It walks you through how they would produce financial statements for companies and stuff like this. So that's why I got this book, and it gives you like an Excel guide while you're doing it. So basically, you will learn how to produce the contents of this book in Excel by the time you're done reading it. Bogle on mutual funds. John C. Bogle, controversial in my opinion. Some of his books are bad, like really bad, and some of his books are okay. This book on mutual funds will encourage you to buy into mutual funds, but what I think what's great about it is that it goes over the fine print that you might not read on mutual funds. Like for example, some of the mutual funds I bought, the links to find their fine print, like for example their marketing expenses or things like this, are really convoluted and hidden. And he has a great way of basically showing you how to find the data that you need in order to determine whether the mutual fund is good or not. So that's why I like this book. The ideas in the book, if you know nothing about finance, are great, but if you know something about finance, maybe too basic. Phishing for Fools, this was a gift. The idea behind this book is that markets are not inherently rational, and that when markets are in fact efficient, they might be a detriment. So efficiency isn't always good, and pursuing what is most rational might not always be good either. Markets can be used to hurt people or harm people, even when it economically benefits you. That's the idea behind this book, and that's exactly why I'm going to read it, because it sounds kind of interesting. I think there's a bit of like a rational market thesis is treated like a religion in finance. Corporate Financial Strategy. This is a book I got a long time ago that just goes over corporate financial decisions. I wouldn't say it's so much in picking investments for corporations, more so structuring corporations for different strategies. I think that's a better way of saying what this book is about. It's a very good book. This is also a gift. Money, 5,000 Years of Debt and Power. Basically, the person who I was getting gifts with for Christmas said that you might like this book, and I looked at it and said, yeah, that's a book I would read. I will intend to read this as well, and I think this would be a good complement to the debt book, and also another book I read called Money Changes Everything. Let's see. Okay, this book is, I don't have the cover for it because I bought it used, and it's the Oxford Handbook of Corporate Governance, and this is where you're going to get a lot of philosophy of finance discussions. In fact, it's so philosophy of finance heavy, you see virtually no formulas in this book, because a lot of it is just dealing with like, how do you get investors to have the same incentives as executives, or how do you get how do you get them to be on the same level? How do you make it so that companies are governed in a way that is compatible with the law, but also profit? Things like this. Just the philosophy of governing a corporation, stuff like this. That's all it is. Which can be interesting in some cases, and in some cases might be boring. Public Finance in Canada. This is just a public finance textbook. I took an economics degree, but actually I had a double major, and this is one of the books we were recommended to read for our economics readings. This is an older edition, obviously, but it just goes over things like this, right? Welfare, basically public policy, population aging, and how that will impact savings and stuff like this. Just random structural issues related to public finance. But this one in specific deals with Canada. So all the data is based on Canada. Investments. This is an old investments textbook. There is now, I think, a 10th edition of this. I think I have, is this This is the 5th Canadian edition. I think there's an 8th, no, I think there's a 10th edition, ironically. This is also like an introduction textbook if you know nothing about finance, but you want to take a serious approach to it, not just read like some business guru like Rich Dad Poor Dad stuff. Then read this. As long as you can do algebra, you'll probably be fine. And some statistics. But nothing too complex in this book. The real issue with this book is it's written very abstractly, and the writers are not really good writers. But the concepts in here are super solid. Next, this is a great book. So this book, I don't know if this, the next one's not related to this. So this is an entrepreneurial finance textbook. Deals less with like equities and more to do with like actual companies and how they're set up, how to run the company so that you don't basically fail. I think the number one reason in America that small businesses fail is poor financial management. Think like that, yeah. That's what this book is going to be. And then to complement this book, there is a entrepreneurial finance casebook. This casebook is not related to that textbook, but this casebook I do believe has a textbook that you can get. And this just goes over different companies and how they manage their finances, just case by case basis. Very helpful to get applications of concepts. Now this is a derivatives markets textbook. I haven't actually read this one yet. And this will be a very long read. I intend to actually read this, not this year, maybe not even next year, but the year after, depending how long it takes me to get through my finance stack that I have here. But this one is definitely going to be a very long read for me to go through. This will probably take me 6 months to read. Because I don't want to just like read it and not understand the logic behind what's being said. So, yeah. Next is this Introduction to Finance. This is the one that I read a long time ago, like 3 years ago. This is literally just an overview. I spilled coffee on it, by the way. This is literally just an overview of finance, like an introduction, short-term business financing, managing working capital, capital structure and the cost of capital, estimating project cash flows, evaluating business investments, financial analysis and long-term planning. That's what this is. It's actually a good book. I spent a lot of time looking for a good intro to finance textbook, and this is the one I found. I liked it. It was pretty good. Okay, next. Benjamin Graham. I need to get the rest of Benjamin Graham. This is his security analysis. This one and the interpretation of financial statements, and there's one more. The Intelligent Investor. I don't know. This one is basically how Graham it gives like his overview of securities. Right, it's a selection of fixed value investments. What else? Sources of information. Yeah, interesting little book. Most people actually have this book, then they read it. I haven't read it yet though. Money Changes Everything. This is like how finance made civilization possible. It's kind of a history of finance, but the idea is that when you read the history of finance, you'll see that civilization, many of the things inside civilization were only a result of inventions inside finance, such as money, debt, investors, capital growth versus like asset growth and stuff like that. Sorry, like the growth on labor, like capital and labor, and then the growth on farmland and things like this. He goes over different areas, even like I think the first banks he talks about were with the Crusaders, and he talks about this. It's an interesting book. I recommend it to people. Macro Markets, Creating Institutions for Managing Society's Largest Economic Risks. I only got this because of Robert J. Shiller, and I also love the Clarendon publications in general. But this is I think this is one of Robert J. Shiller's more academic books. He has a bunch that are more oriented towards popular consumption. But this one is a much more technical book. And I haven't read it yet, but yeah. It seems like it's going to be a good book, because I very, very seldom find books from Clarendon that are bad. Investing in the Middle East, Political Economy of European Direct Investment in Egypt. This is an outdated book. It's very old. But if you want ideas about this stuff, then I recommend this book. This one deals, I think, specifically with Egypt. I have another economics book that deal with the economics of the Middle East. I'm a very big Middle Eastern history reader, buff. I'll read the history, I'll read the finance, the economics, even like the philosophy of Middle Eastern scholars. It's one of the regions in the world that I think are more interesting because they're more dynamic. Whereas like American politics is boring to me. Alan Greenspan, The Map, The Territory 2.0, Risk, Human Nature, and the Future of Forecasting. Yeah, it's just a book by Greenspan. That's the only reason why I got it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I only got it because it was Greenspan. I was in a bookstore and saw this. Like, well, okay, Greenspan's not a complete idiot. He might have made some blunders, but he might have some intelligent things to say. So, Irrational Exuberance, Revised and Expanded 3rd Edition, Robert J. Shiller. This is one of his more popular books. I think he has another one called Animal Spirits. I think the premise of this book is that stocks heavily fluctuate depending on media, amplification mechanisms, naturally occurring Ponzi processes. What is this? Stocks, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what this book is about. I highly recommend reading Shiller. Niall Ferguson, I have all of his books now. I think I've bought them all. The Ascent of Money. This is just a history of money, I believe. I believe that's all it is. Niall Ferguson's a very interesting writer. He wrote a biography on Kissinger. He has some politics books, and he has some finance books. Or history of finance, I guess. King of Capital. Remarkable Rise and Fall and Rise Again of Steve Schwarzman and Blackstone. I have another mutual fund book on the other side that I forgot to include in this stack, but I don't actually care who about this person is. I was in the bookstore and I had no books to get, and I said, I literally saw this book in the books like 15 times before I decided to buy it. I know Blackstone, but I don't know the guy. Why Wall Street Matters. This book was okay. If you know nothing about finance, read this book. If you understand the importance of like having a stock market, then read this book. If you don't think there's any importance, then you need to read this book. That's all it is, okay? Young Money, Inside the Hidden World of Wall Street's Post-Crash Recruits. So this book goes over how they recruit people into Wall Street now and how it's a different culture and they're more risk-adverse and yada yada yada. Again, I only bought this book because I didn't need a book. I wanted to buy a book in the bookstore, and there were no good books. Currency Wars, The Making of the Next Global Crisis. This was a great book. I highly recommend this. James Rickards in general, he's a great author, great writer. But this book goes over like how the Federal Reserve will make some policy to basically inflate the Chinese yuan, because at one point China pegged the yuan against the US dollar. Or it talks about the international trade relations between America and Europe being dependent on inflation rates of their respective currencies. Stuff like this. Or like the petrodollar, and how like if China, he actually did like a thought experiment, how if China and Russia decide to make their own currency and only accepted trade in that currency for their cheap goods or for their oil, that this would be a threat to the US dollar. Stuff like that. Globalizing Innovations, State Institutions, and Foreign Direct Investment in Emerging Economies. I still need to read this book, but I'm a big-time proponent of emerging economy investment. I invest in many emerging economies, and so I want to read this book. Yeah, I also need to get some books on Poland, because one of the countries I like most is Poland. Warren Buffett, Interpretation of Financial Statements. I mean, you guys probably watched me review this book like literally like a video ago or so. And then the last one is The Intelligent Investor. So those are my finance/accounting books. There's maybe 1 or 2 books missing, but that's not a big deal. And with that being said, bye-bye.